Is our second program in the month of Ramadan, our third Sunday. But because Ramadan started on a Sunday, we thought we would start the next Sunday. Today's discussion is going to be on the topic, the 8 objectives of the Quran. The 8 objectives of the Holy Quran is cited in the work of Sheikh Muhammad Tahir, famously known as Ibn Ashur. He's got a masterpiece tafsir called At-Tahrir wa Tanweer. Sheikh Ibn Ashur is one of those amazing scholars, and he, with the Muslim world, in fact the Muslim intelligentsia, the ulama fraternity, research scholars are indebted to him for his outstanding thinking, ability, skill. And he was the champion of the very famous work called Maqasid al-Sharia. I remember the late brother Muhammad Amra, Allah grant him Jannatul Firdaus and give him a high status in Jannah. He mentioned this in a conference, and it was called the Al-Ghazali conference. I think there was a revered brother and sister from America, American couple, and they kind of, brought about the revival of Imam Ghazali's work to students, to young learners from Maktab level, and trying to bring about this revival of Islamic thought. So they ran a conference at the Qurtuba Center, and at the end of the conference there was little time left, and Muhammad Marhum couldn't finish his presentation, his paper. But at that presentation, we were present there, and he mentioned he cannot understand how is it possible that in a Darul Ulum you don't have the subject of the maqasid of the Sharia, the objectives of the Sharia. He couldn't understand it. He was just really surprised. And when I heard that comment from him, I said, we need to do it. We must make sure our students are introduced to this important subject. And ever since then we introduced it, and I think we had it introduced maybe a year before that, but then we took it a bit more serious. And believe you me, the feedback we got from our students who qualified after doing this subject, and they normally finish 1 or 2 kitabs in the subject, to give them a glimpse into how important and relevant the subject is. The fraternity, the financial, the Muslim economic fraternity, the medical fraternity, and all important centers have actually taken from Imam Ibn Ashur and used his explanation and done further research to find solutions to the Muslim Ummah in economics, in medicine, in research, in science, etc., etc. So that's why I'm saying we are really indebted to this amazing scholar. He was from Tunisia, and if you read about him and research about him, you'll find he was one of those gifted, brilliant minds that Allah has given this Ummah, blessed this Ummah with. He's the champion in this particular field. And, knowing the objectives is so important, because just like I was coming, I said to one of our local brothers, some of the traffic, if you can just send them over this side, the Halim crowd. So he was laughing, he said, no, after they collect the Halim, that might be too late. So I was saying, and you look at some of the locals as well helping out in this distribution, which is a good thing, mashallah, to feed people. But on the other hand, if you look at how we've misunderstood the priority of our religion. A brother said recently, he said, it's difficult for a Muslim to cross the road and come and visit somebody who's ill, sick, in a situation. But it's easy for a Muslim to travel 500 plus kilometers to attend a janazah of a friend. It just shows our priorities. The reason for it is, how we understand Islamic issues and the call of Islam and the demands of Islam is because of how and what we prioritize. Now when we go through the objectives of the Quran, there's 8 of them. Like we done last week, we gave one question, and it was a Zimbabwean student who answered from Zimbabwe about the number of times the word taqwa appears in the Quran. And he heard the presentation, and he answered 200 and some odd times, 220 or 260 times. But at the same time, you and I, when we do this 8 objectives, I just want you to just try to focus and see if you'll have the answer for this presentation. I'm not even going to tell you the question, but I just want you to think and see, and hopefully inshallah next week, if Allah give us the opportunity, we'll take a look at what answer do you have regarding after you just hear or understand some of these objectives. So let's get into it. The relevance and importance of knowing and understanding the objectives of anything. Number one, it creates and awakens the awareness within us. Now we need to focus on what is the purpose, objective of something. Number two, it gives us a deeper and a more meaningful perspective to things. Now you understand the purpose and meaningful, for example, you've got a mobile phone. What's the purpose of it? So once you know this is the purpose of it, you make sure that it is used for that purpose primary. Secondary, it's fine, but you will not sacrifice the primary objective of that particular unit, gadget, whatever it is, for a secondary thing. You won't do that. That's what we do in economics. We have a budget. I have primary cost to cover, and I've got secondary cost, entertainment, whatever else. I can't sacrifice my primary for my secondary. I know what to put first, what's important, education, health, etc., etc. Likewise, so that's good. And the third thing, it removes what we call hayra, confusion. So somebody who knows my objective, you take a student, he knows I'm coming from far away to Miftahul Khair. What am I coming here for? Am I coming here for physical exercise? Am I coming to see South Africa, tour, make friends? What am I coming here for? The student who has the objective of his reason of coming to study will be stand out from any other student who doesn't, or is not clear, or is confused. So this is what the benefit of the objectives of purpose of anything gives us. Now, likewise, let's ask the question, the most important purpose of our creation is what? So we know, it's a common thing in the Quran, very explicit. We are created for the purpose of worship. So it's famously said, خَلَّقَنَا بِالْعِبَادَةِ. That's what we know. So anybody who understands that, if you ask him to give charity, you ask him to fast, you ask him to do this, you ask him to look after his aging parents, you ask him to look after his family members, whatever you ask him to do, he will not or she will not hesitate, knowing that this is my purpose to worship Allah. Unless we got the meaning or the word wrong. That we'll understand, so worship. Number two, it said, وَكَلَّفْنَا بِالْخِلَافَةِ. And we are instructed to be representatives of Allah, to represent Allah, to be deputies of Allah. That's what Allah has instructed us to be. So this is the most important thing we need to remember. If we are aware and conscious about this, anywhere you go, you'll make sure that this is not sacrificed. For example, a Muslim is in a private place, somebody asks him to do corruption, somebody asks him to do something which is wrong, morally wrong, financially wrong, he will not do it. He's got the consciousness of, I am a representative of Allah. It's not just about myself. It's bringing the religion, the deen of Allah into ill repute, into a negative space. So you'll find what happens now. We understand our creation, our purpose of creation, who are we? Now there are 8 objectives of the Quran. We're going to focus on at least one of them, inshallah. Number 1, the first one, to have the correct creed. We can call it ideology, which we commonly know to have the correct tawheed. This is the first one. The second one, to develop good character. The third one, to derive legislation. The Quran is our book of legislation. You cannot have any law that is not found in the Quran. It's not possible. Number 4, to establish a political system. Number 5, to narrate stories of the past for the purpose of deriving and extracting important lessons from the Quran. Number 6, to be up to date with current knowledge. There are certain current knowledge that's happening, science, technology. One of the purposes is to be up to date and to pursue current knowledge. Number 7, advice and admonition. Number 8, to understand and appreciate the miraculous nature of the Quran in order to confirm the status of Risala, of the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the objectives of the Quran. Now we're going to just look at one first. Let's look at Tawheed. Now before we go on to Tawheed, there are 4 categories of Tawheed that are commonly known and we should be aware about it. Number 1, Rububiyah, Tawheed al-Rububiyah. This means the Lordship of Allah, that Allah is the Lord, sovereignty of Allah. You know, like you have a country, the country will allow everything, but they will not allow you to dismantle, to interfere with the sovereignty of the country. That is ultimate. You don't do that. And if you try doing something, you'll be charged the highest level of charge will be against you, and the punishment is severe. So Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Number 2, the authority of Allah, we call it Tawheed al-Hakimiyyah. That Allah is the ultimate Hakim. That's why recently our elder and respected scholar mentioned about Muslim countries that have signed off to the UN. In other words, meaning that the UN becomes your final place of law. Whatever law they make, you cannot go against it. You've signed. Hence, a Muslim country is not supposed to do that because of Tawheed Hakimiyyah. Allah is the ultimate authority. Number 3, sole and primary object of worship is Allah. We call this Tawheed Uluhiyyah. Our most important and primary object when we worship is nothing else. So even if we put, a lot of people ask the question that you people pray to Kaaba, you pray to a wall. We say that's perhaps there, but our sole and primary object is to pray to Allah. And Allah is free from any direction. Number 4, we believe in His names and attributes. Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat. So these are the 4 categories of Tawheed that we just need to at least know. There are 6 pillars of Iman, also important to know. Belief in Allah, belief in the angels, belief in the divine books, the revealed and divine books or scrolls, believe in prophets, all the prophets, believe in the day of judgment, and believe in Qadar, or we call it divine decree. That's also important. Now, from the 4 categories of Tawheed, let us just focus on one for now, and this is Asma wa Sifat. In order to understand how knowing Allah through His attributes changes our perspective on important issues that affects all of us. I'm going to give you the example of Allah being Ar-Razzaq, the provider. Now, this is something, sustenance and risk is something that is beyond location, race, or religion. You can go anywhere in the world. Every person who reaches an age of responsibility is concerned about sustenance, risk. And this worry and concern has not only driven people to, perhaps you can say, to do things which sometimes you get confused, you cannot believe, but has also brought a lot of worry and concern and stress to many, especially those who are responsible to provide for others. What is risk? The question is. Just to try to show you how, when we understand Allah, or we know Allah through His names and attributes. Now Allah's have many titles. It's one Allah with many characteristics, many titles. And you notice, you will see all of these titles are positive. So let's just see how, when you understand Allah as Razzaq, the provider. There are 2 types of risk: material, or what we call money, tangible. And the second one is called moral, internal, or you can even say spiritual risk. This is the non-tangible. Next to the first one, you've got a sign of the dollar, and next to the second one is qalb salim, to have a pure heart. In the Quran it says, these will be the successful people. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Those will be truly successful people. So it's talking more not on the material, but more on the condition of our hearts. May Allah make it possible for us to have good qalb salim, inshallah. Now if you look at the example of moral and internal wealth, is the content of the heart. When we say qana'at in Arabic, emotional well-being, or having a healthy spiritual conditioning. Our spiritual status and condition is healthy. Healthy means like, we don't entertain negative thoughts about somebody. We avoid things that are kind of futile. We avoid hasad. We avoid all those kind of things. The whispers of shaitan. You'll find there are Quranic verses and ayats that are there for us to read and recite so that we keep our heart clean. Now, the means of attaining wealth is also risk in and by itself. Risk can be achieved through two ways. Number one, striving, where you find the Prophet ﷺ said in hadith of Bukhari, "Ma akala ahadun ta'am qattu khayran min an yakula min amali yadi." Encouraging and motivating one to work for with his own hands. To work, make an effort and work. It's also known from Hazrat Umar. He discouraged people to sit around in the masjid, especially young ones, but rather encourage they go out and work, because this is famous. To strive and to work hard. Number two, independent of striving. Allah says in the Quran, those people who have consciousness of Allah, and they always practice this consciousness of Allah, Allah will provide for them from sources that they least expect. And those sources are like what? For example, they could be a source of coming to us from inheritance. Sometimes you never expect and something just happened. People do business, they never expect the business to turn out so positive, and things just flourished. So and people will tell you, I hardly done much, it wasn't, I really don't know how it happened. A lot of people through difficulty and hardship, at that time they decided to give charity. And there are many, many examples of people sincerely giving charity for the pleasure of Allah in difficult times, and Allah made them see very easy and you can say flourishing times. So this is another example of risk. Now what I'm saying, if you look at this particular quality of Ar-Razzaq, and we don't constrict our understanding of risk to be material and tangible, but we understand that, having a good spiritual condition is risk. Having morals, good morals, is risk. Having skill is risk. Having the ability to use our hands, our mind, and other kind of skills and talent Allah has given is also risk. What you find is our meaning now changes. The understanding of risk now changes. And how many times did you not find or see a person really go out of their way, make a concerted effort to do something good with the talent Allah has given them, Muslim or non-Muslim? And what you find? You find the brother or sister has become extremely wealthy. Whether it is literally, or you can say in a literal sense of wealth, to have lots of wealth, or they have become truly wealthy, a change of life in the sense that they were really rich. Now they really don't have that tangible wealth, but they found tremendous contentment, which we call qana'at. Just a change of mindset. We see this a lot with people who are very famous. A lot of times they've given up a lifestyle and they've changed to a different, a much more humble lifestyle, and they've just said they would never now trade this particular present lifestyle for what they had before. It's no match, no comparison, Muslim and non-Muslim. Because Allah has given them a certain qana'at, contentment. So this is the benefit of understanding and knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His asma wa sifat. Just to show you one example. A lot of times we come to Allah without knowing Allah. We come to Allah without loving Allah. And we come to Allah with having a negative understanding of who Allah is. I have many adults that speak to me and tell me, When we grew up in the 80s and 90s, we were taught that Allah is a punishing Allah. Allah is a legislator of haram. Allah is somebody who's going to do this and that, a very negative mindset. We're not saying that you got license to do as you feel like. Obviously, that will be self-destruction that you see what's happening in the West. Children who've got great talent go to university and find the freedom now. Or then get a degree and find the freedom to earn and do what they feel like or travel because they're holding a degree. If they don't have any limits to them, then you'll see what's happening like in Sweden. The highest amount of suicide are in those countries rather than expecting it to come from Africa. It's right in the first world country. They've got so much they don't know what to do anymore, and there's nothing to really fill the emptiness of the heart that needs it. So that is why there has to be certain rules. But what I'm trying to explain here, and the point I'm driving is, when we are introduced to Allah as Ghafoor Rahim, as Allah does in the Quran, every chapter, the Quran starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If we are introduced to Allah from this angle and we start to understand who Allah is, when we look at how kind and merciful Allah is to ourselves and to around us and everything, what happens now? We start falling tremendously, deeply in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you're deeply in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then whatever comes to you, it comes to you from either it's a way of Allah elevating you, cleansing you, grounding you, and it's a relationship. It's like somebody who's in a love relationship with somebody, and it takes a toll on them. They have to make a lot of contribution, they have to make a lot of sacrifices, they have to leave their place of comfort, travel far away, they have to do all of that, but in doing so, what do they find? They find happiness and joy. The reason the relationship is structured upon love. This is what I'm trying to say. When we know and we understand Allah through His Asma wa Sifat wa Lillahi al-Asma'ul Husna, all the names of Allah are beautiful. That's one of the principles of the 99 names of Allah, that we have to understand all of them are beautiful. And once we understand it deeper, we see the reality of what is being said. So this is regarding that. Now there are 10 ways of increasing risk sustenance. We'll just go through them. Number one, what we discussed last week, to have consciousness of Allah. And there's nothing better and more sweeter than young teens having consciousness of Allah compared to people who are quite elderly. When a teenager has got consciousness of Allah, then it's the most beautiful thing. You will find in that teen that will have a positive impact wherever that teen goes to, travels, be wherever. Story of Yusuf alayhi salam. What beautiful looks did Yusuf alayhi salam have? Amazing handsomeness given to him. Allah, it was something that nobody could possibly say no to. But look at Yusuf alayhi salam, with the consciousness he had, how beautiful. He changed an entire poverty-stricken country. Egypt was going down. He brought it right up again. That's what a teenager, boy or girl, does when they have consciousness of Allah. They just do beautiful things. So this is number one. Number two, tawakkul, reliance and faith in Allah, not on the means. The means are a way of reaching, but our focus is on Allah, not on the means. Once we have that, we stop worshipping the means and we focus on Allah. It's very easy to see in our times, you'll find there are lots of things that are means, but we get bogged down to think that the means are what gives us joy, and people normally commit, invest in it, until afterwards they find it doesn't do anything. The wrong way we went about it, we didn't understand the means is only a way, but the ultimate thing is reliance on Allah. Ibadah, in the broader and wider context. What is the meaning of ibadah? There could be two principles we need to remember. One is, anything that affects our relationship directly with Allah falls under the framework of ibadah. And anything that is between us and creation falls under the framework of khilafah. That's how you know. So your direct relationship, anything that directly affects your relationship with Allah is ibadah. For example, to be grateful is ibadah. To be grateful and thankful is ibadah. That is why the Sharia puts so much of emphasis on shukr, to be thankful to Allah. To remember Allah, dhikrullah, is ibadah. If we don't remember Allah, it affects our relationship with Allah. In a sense that what happens now, we start becoming ghafil, and you'll find a lot of the rights of Allah start getting neglected. So this is one way of remembering ibadah from khilafah. Number 4, iman and good conduct, righteous behavior, good conduct, iman. Number 5, assisting good causes, getting involved in projects or causes that are beneficial to humanity, beneficial to the society, beneficial to animals, mankind, etc. Number 6, good family relations. Family relations are something that has come gifted to us by Allah, to keep good family relations. Number 7, thankfulness, to be grateful to Allah. The one who is thankful to Allah, Allah increases them. 8, forgiveness and repentance. Number 9, charity, forgiveness and repentance. This is the times of forgiveness and repentance, the night, the Tahajjud time, after Salah, also many other occasions. We have so many occasions, the day of Jummah, certain hours in Jummah, to ask for forgiveness and repentance. You see the adhkar after Salah, I always tell the students, look at these adhkar after Salah, beautiful things to do. Charity, to give in charity also draws increase in rizq. Lots of people, when they're facing difficulty, they give charity and they see the benefit immediately. It's a tried and tested thing globally. And number 10, hijrah, to make hijrah. So these are to do more with number 1. Number 2, the second objective of the Quran is to develop good character. To develop good character. You'll find the Prophet ﷺ, Hazrat Aisha was asked about the Prophet ﷺ's character, and she said, khuluqul Quran. So good character starts from the Quran. You don't need to find good character anywhere else. Your starting point should be the Quran. There's so many examples where the Quran talks. For example, the Quran says, "Inna ba'da dhann ithm." If you entertain negative thoughts, it's a sin. How many times don't you see an entire war took place because a person in charge or a powerful members had certain negative thoughts of a certain country, just thoughts, and they went to war. We don't have to go far away. If you think about Iraq, the Iraqi war, and you think about so many other wars recently, you will find it's based on negative thoughts, assumptions. And you don't have to go far away, look locally. How many times do you find domestically there's a war in a home or a war between family members based on allegations, assumptions, or rumor, or perhaps in today's time, a text message that just went off, not understanding the context, etc. So, this deep akhlaq, the Quran says if somebody is not good with you, you still have to do justice. Even if it's a non-Muslim, you still have to. Somebody asked me the other day, why is it that the Fajr Azan is soft? I said, because we have to be fair. When we asked the lady opposite, she wasn't comfortable with the loud Azan, it's disturbing her sleep. So is her haqq first, or is the haqq of our beautiful Azan first? We have to ask ourselves this question. Her right as the neighbor is first before anything else. We cannot inconvenience her just because we want to hear the adhan. This is Sharia, this is what the Quran teaches us. So we have to be just. Now, as much as people like to listen to the adhan, their feelings and emotions aside, we have to do what is correct. That's the challenge. Can we reach that position by doing what is correct and not much concern about the emotions of ourselves or others? And that's what the Quran develops into you. So you see, anybody who stood up and has been a notable person of late, whether it was Malcolm X, or whether it was any influential scholar or person or politician or activist or journalist, or even if you look at the thousands of Palestinians and others that come from that region of resistance. So many times they stood their ground to do what is just, immaterial of the repercussions and the harm. But they believe in the concept, I rather live a life of standing up for the right thing and die for it, rather than being a coward and backing off. The Quran teaches us this. We saw it in history, in Islamic history. So many things of the Prophet ﷺ, they went through starvation. They were excommunicated. And at a point, if you read Islamic history, you will find they were actually eating grass. The Prophet ﷺ and others lost so much of weight. It was unbelievable. Just because there was sanctions against them for what they stood. But the Prophet ﷺ did not give up. They stood their ground, and many of them got killed, they got tortured. And Allah wanted to protect, He protected others, but they did not compromise on the truth. This is pure akhlaq. Today, our minds are such, if somebody, is courteous and kind, but they're unjust, or they're racist, or they do other kinds of mischief, we don't seem to understand and say, that's not good character. This is good character, somebody who's honest, he's an activist or she's an activist, she speaks the truth, she's uprighteous, she avoids. There are so many non-Muslims that lost their lives because they stood up against corruption on government level. Females. So many in the world that went as journalists to capture the story and bring the true story to the world to see. They got shot, they got killed, they got raped, they got tortured. How can anybody forget them? Real man and real woman will never forget them. The problem is there's very few real men and real women. And you'll notice the common thing the Quran says, لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء إلا من سلم. You're not allowed to become vulgar or become loud. But in the case of zulm, you should. See, this is a Quranic principle. Now you look at us today, for example, us as scholars, as ulama, how many of us are brought up to say we need to speak the truth? We need to speak truth to power. If we speak truth to power, I promise you, there wouldn't be corruption around us. Never. Where the Prophet ﷺ was, and in history we know, when they were uprighteous men, as Umar was, had some of the Sahaba were very senior, Khalid bin Walid, Rahman bin Auf and others, very senior Sahaba, holding high position. As Umar didn't make any exception. He treated them like how we treat everybody. Everything had to be checked. They didn't like it. They were uncomfortable. Some objected, some started feeling. But as Umar stood his ground. And think about how famous is he today anywhere you go in the world. Likewise, so many other male and female Sahaba, Sahabiyat and other scholars and people. So they never forget, they never die, they always remain with you. This is what the Quran wants to develop, good character that will never go away. So good character we take from the Quran. If we're reading the Quran, studying the Quran, it cannot be we miss the point of good character. Inshallah, we will leave it till here for today, and hopefully if we get an opportunity, we will continue next week, inshallah. I hope you benefited from the session. Allah grant us tawfiq to practice upon whatever we learn and to have a much stronger and a better relationship with the Quran Kareem. So we leave the 8 objectives, so we read it out for you, perhaps it came on the print, and you yourself can think about the answer, inshallah. If there's any question and answers, you can ask. Give a few minutes.